candy for you to eat. Would you eat that? No. Why not?
He's a stranger.
He's a stranger, okay, well, so what? So he's a stranger.
Somebody that we don't know, and like he might have added some bad ingredients in it, so.
Yeah. Now, if your mother said, here's some candy she carved. What if your mom said, here's some candy? Would you eat that?
Yeah.
Yeah, very enthusiastically, right? So because you don't know that person, who can elaborate on that? What does that mean? Oh, I don't know that person, therefore I won't accept the food that they're offering me. What does that mean?
They're not trustworthy.
Or at least you don't know that they're trustworthy, right? You're not
Not
sure.
even know that person.
Yeah. So you don't trust them. You know that word, to trust somebody. So we don't trust that person. What if you travel north? It's very cold in the winter up north. Go up to Illinois or something, and you come across Lake Michigan, and oh my gosh, there's this huge Lake Michigan, and it's covered with ice because it's so cold, So somebody says, hey, let's go get our ice skates on and go skating on Lake Michigan. What's your name?
I'm Bob.
Bob? Okay, so you go up and there's Lake Michigan with a sheet of ice on it. And somebody says, hey, Bob, let's get our ice skates on and go ice skating. Would you do that?
I would.
And why would you do that? I mean,
It sounds fun.
it sounds fun, but guess what? Have you ever lived up north where it's nice and cold and the lakes get ice on them?
I haven't.
Okay. Sometimes the ice isn't thick enough. And people say, let's go ice skating. And out they go on their skates and they crack right through the ice. And they're drowning in the freezing water. So, because you're innocent like that, or naive, you don't know better, you just think, oh, it looks fun, so let's go do it. But someone with a little more experience because they grew up maybe in that area, so they know, you can tell when the ice is thick enough, it has a certain color. It actually looks more white than clear. So they know it's thick enough to stand on or it's not thick enough to stand on. So they know when to trust it, So the point I'm making is everything we do in life requires that we have some trust or some faith. So sometimes somebody might just be really innocent. So they indiscriminately trust or have faith. Like if Shrikar was only 2 years old and a stranger came up to him and offered him candy, he'd probably accept it because the power of discrimination is not there to think it out, But because he's older, he has that power of discrimination. So what's being brought up here, the point that we're trying to make is everything we do requires some faith and some trust. But what prevents us from having faith and trust? I don't have faith that that person, I don't trust that that person is giving me, bona fide candy. It might have some poison in it or something. Or I don't trust that that ice is thick enough for me to go ice skating on. So what is that lack of trust or faith?
Probably because of fear.
Okay, fear.
That we have some knowledge.
What's that about?
We have some knowledge. We have some kind of knowledge. What is making you to, think about whether it is I can go or trust or not.
Uh-huh. But that knowledge might be misleading us too,
Yeah, of course.
right? Because like he said, I don't know that person, so I don't know if I can trust
Yeah,
him. Well, he might be very trustworthy, but you just don't know,
yeah.
right? So what is it that we have in our heart that is preventing us from trusting that person, from trusting that ice, from trusting Krishna. What's the blockage? In other words, like, what's the opposite of faith? Faith means I trust you. I totally trust you. That's what faith is. Fear, well, he already said fear. But fear arises from, there's something, what's the word that we're looking for? Krishna used it in this verse, I'll give you a hint. Doubt. Doubts are residing in our heart. Everybody knows what the word doubt means. Because of doubt, I don't take the candy that you offered me. Because I have some doubts about your motive, about your character. You invite me to go ice skating on Lake Michigan. I don't do it. If I have some doubts about whether that ice is really, thick enough. It's got to be like a foot thick before you can put your body on it, I have my doubts. Similarly, Krishna concludes the Bhagavad-Gītā with a very, very simple instruction. He says, abandon all your concepts of shelter. Abandon all concepts you have of where is my shelter. Abandon all concepts of what you feel your duty is. Abandon all concepts of what you think where my allegiance should go. Abandon all of that and simply fully surrender exclusively unto me. Has anybody here ever gone parachuting? Me neither. You know why? I have a lot of doubts that just because I pull a little string, all of a sudden this balloon's going to go up in the air and I'm going to be saved, I don't trust those things, So due to doubt, I refuse to go parachuting. But if you go parachuting, you're taking complete shelter of that apparatus, isn't it? You have nothing else. You can't take shelter of your friend who may be parachuting 50 feet away. They can't help you. You can't take shelter of your legs. You can't take shelter of your intelligence. Nothing you have to take shelter of except that little parachute. So that means you have to have incredible faith in that parachute to abandon all other shelters and just take shelter of the parachute. So Krishna says at the very end of the Bhagavad-Gītā, his instruction is, abandon all your concepts of what you think you have as shelter. Abandon all concepts of what you think you have as your duty or your responsibilities or your allegiance, etc., and just exclusively surrender to me. What do we require to do that?
Intelligence.
Faith.
Faith, intelligence. Faith and intelligence based on what? No doubt. We have to have a doubt-free consciousness in order to fully surrender to Krishna. We fully surrender to the parachute when I have full faith, no doubts. So I will fully surrender to Krishna one day. That day will come when we will all individually fully surrender to Krishna. But it will never happen if we harbor doubts in our heart. So we should understand that doubts are our obstacle. Prabhupada actually says later in the 8th chapter here that doubts are compared to demons. And demons should be gotten rid of, annihilated. So he says that Krishna, for those of you who are a little familiar with Krishna's pastimes, that Krishna was very famous and very expert. He was famous for and expert at killing demons. So Krishna tells Arjuna that the demons which reside in our heart in the form of doubts, they have to be annihilated. So here in this first verse of chapter 7, which is called Knowledge of the Absolute, notice how Krishna starts this chapter. We want to have knowledge of the Absolute, right? There's so much knowledge out there. You go and get your degree in chemistry because you want to have knowledge about chemistry, right? You go get your degree in basket weaving because you want to have knowledge about basket weaving. So we're studying Bhagavad-Gītā for what reason? To have knowledge of the Absolute. But Krishna begins this chapter entitled Knowledge of the Absolute by saying, just hear from me. You don't have to do anything. There's no other prerequisite. Just sit down and hear from me. How you can actually know me in full, free from all doubts. How many people here would like to be free of all doubt so that they could know Krishna in full? That's why we're here. That's why we're in the Satsanga, because we want to assist each other in making progress on that path of someday knowing Krishna in full. It's wonderful to know Krishna a little bit, but once you get a little taste, you want more, and you want more, and ultimately we want to know Krishna in full. So Krishna is saying here, you can know me in full, completely free of all doubts. Because if there are any doubts, you can't know Krishna in full. So Krishna is saying, just hear from me how you can achieve that goal. And how do we achieve that goal? Krishna is saying that one must practice yoga, and here yoga does not mean, sitting asanas and breathing exercises. Here in the word for word, Prabhupada translated yoga as self-realization. So Krishna says, you can know me in full, free from all doubts, by practicing Bhakti Yoga, which is the science of self-realization. And one must do this with their mind attached to Krishna, not with the mind spaced out all over the place, and being in full consciousness of Krishna. So that's a really high order, not many of us can keep our mind on Krishna, fully attached to Krishna, because we have so many other attachments, So we won't read all of Prabhupada's purport, but towards the end of Prabhupada's purport to this verse, he cites some verses from Canto 1 of Srimad Bhagavatam, which is like the graduate study of Bhagavad-Gītā. So in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, second chapter, there's a series of verses, and Prabhupada is citing some of those. And he says that these verses outline the process for understanding Krishna. That it's actually like a science, So we'll just go through those. I'll just read the Sanskrit to those verses. They go like this. Shrinvatam Svakata Krishna, if you want to chant along. Punya Shravana Kirtana Vidyanta Stotya Bhadrani Vidunoti Saritsatam Nashnareshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamashloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishviki Tagadas Jastamoha Kamalo Bhavdayasche Chita Vidam Sitam Sattve Pasidati Emam Prasanna Manaso Bhagavad Bhakti Yogatana Bhagavad Tattva Vijnanam Muktasangasya jayate vidyate hridaya granthi chidyante sarvasamshaya Chiyante chasya karmani drishta eva manishvare. So Prabhupada then is summarizing what those verses are saying. So he says, to hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures, or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad-Gītā, is itself righteous activity. And for one who hears about Krishna, Lord Krishna, who is dwelling in everyone's heart, acts as a best wishing friend and purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him. So Krishna is sitting in the heart of every living entity as the super soul. And when he sees that a living entity is hearing about him from Bhagavad-Gītā or other revealed scriptures, then he's so pleased with the fact that that living entity is hearing about him that he reciprocates with that living entity by, in the heart, scrubbing the heart clean of so many horrible things that are, standing in the way of our progress on the path of self-realization and God-realization. So, doubts are some of the dirt that's in our heart that needs to be cleansed from our heart. So Krishna says this cleansing of the heart begins by hearing. So that's why it's so important to have Prabhupada's Bhagavad-Gītā and every day read and study it, because just that submissive hearing will allow the Lord to clean our heart. Then, in this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge. Because transcendental knowledge is revealed in the heart. So transcendental knowledge cannot be understood by a person with a dirty heart. The heart has to be clean. As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam and from the devotees, he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord. When one hears about Krishna, the natural result, for example, say you hear about how great somebody is, or how wealthy somebody is, how beautiful somebody is, whatever. You're hearing about somebody, about how wonderful they are. The natural result of that hearing is, oh, I want to be with that person. Right? We're all reading about, movie stars and sports stars, athletic, whatever, the Olympic champions and famous musicians or whatever it is. We hear about these people and, ooh, I wish I could be with them, Go meet them, get a handshake or get an autograph or something. So the more we hear about somebody, how great they are, the more our desire to be with them and to do something for them, give them a gift or serve them in some way, that awakens in the heart. So similarly, by hearing about Krishna, the natural desire to serve Krishna becomes awakened in the heart. Right now we might not have much inclination to serve Krishna, but if we hear about Krishna, we fall in love with Krishna, because his hearing about him is very attractive. So the more we become attracted to hearing about Krishna, the more we become attracted to him as a person, and then the more we want to actually render some loving exchange with him, some service. So then the devotee becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord. By development of devotional service, one becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance, and thus material lusts and avarice are diminished. the modes of material nature explained in the Bhagavad-Gītā, especially in the 14th chapter, are compared to ropes. And there's 3 modes of material nature: goodness, passion, and ignorance. And they bind the living entity, just like ropes might bind a prisoner. So the ropes of the modes of material nature bind the living entity to this material world. And what do those ropes of the modes of material nature look like? Well, the modes of passion and ignorance, the symptoms of them, the symptoms of passion and ignorance are things like lust, anger, greed, envy, illusion, madness. These are some of the qualities of the modes of passion and ignorance. Have you ever seen those acting in your life? You don't have to raise your hand. We all experience it, right? We were driving through the traffic to get here, and I'm really not accustomed to. We usually don't drive through big cities at 5:30 in the evening, so rush hour traffic wasn't as bad as Chicago, but Tampa had a lot of traffic tonight, and I could see myself getting like impatient and kind of like disturbed. The lower modes of nature, passion and ignorance, they cause these bad qualities to come out. So we're all captured by those modes of passion and ignorance and tied up like a prisoner, and those lower modes prevent us from actually moving forward. Like if you're tied up with ropes, you can't run forward. You might be an Olympic athlete, but if we tie you up with ropes, you can't move, right? So I, the soul, it's natural for me to be attracted to Krishna, just like iron filings are naturally attracted to a magnet. But if we are tied down by the modes of passion and ignorance, then we can't go forward to Krishna. So here, these Bhagavatam verses were saying that as one engages in devotional service, these lower modes of passion and ignorance, one will become freed from those lower modes. Thus the material lusts and avarice, etc., will diminish. When these impurities are wiped away, the candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness, becomes enlivened by devotional service, and understands the science of God perfectly. Thus, Bhakti Yoga severs the hard knot of material affection and enables one to come at once to the stage of asamshayam samagram, understanding of the Supreme Absolute Truth, Personality of Godhead. Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness can one understand the science of Krishna. So, asamshayam. Samshaya means doubts, and asamshaya means free of doubts. And samagram means completely. So, Krishna is making a promise here in the very first verse of the 7th chapter to Arjuna. He's saying that I am about to reveal to you this very wonderful Bhakti Yoga system. And if you follow this Bhakti Yoga system, I promise you that you will come to that stage of knowing me in full, completely free of all doubts. So, this is the purpose of study of the Bhagavad-Gītā, and this is the purpose of the Krishna consciousness movement. The Krishna consciousness movement is a movement for educating people, instructing people, assisting people in practically applying the principles of Bhakti Yoga or Krishna consciousness to their lives so that their hearts can become cleansed, so that all the demons of doubts can be destroyed, and then one can proceed smoothly on the path of Krishna consciousness. In the 4th chapter of this book, Krishna says that doubts can be removed in one way. There's a weapon, right? If you want to fight an enemy, there's a particular weapon, that you have to destroy that enemy. So there's a particular weapon that Krishna advises that one pull out of their repertoire and use to destroy doubts. Does anybody know what that weapon is?
Knowledge.
Knowledge of chemistry, or what kind of knowledge?
Knowledge of the absolute.
Transcendental knowledge, yes. So Krishna tells Arjuna that only with the sword of transcendental knowledge can the doubts in one's heart be destroyed. Because doubts are based on ignorance. Ignorance is the opposite of having knowledge, right? Devoid of knowledge, proper knowledge. So doubts are based on ignorance. So the more one hears about Krishna, the purpose of the Bhagavad-Gītā is to gain knowledge of Krishna. Beginning with this level of knowledge called Sambandha Jnana. Jnana means knowledge. Sambandha Jnana means knowledge about what is God, what is the living entity, what is the material world, and what is the relation between them. So Sambandha Jnana means to understand the identity, the proper identity of the living entity, proper identity of God, proper identity of the material energy, and how they're all related. Then there's the next level of knowledge is called Abhideya Jnana. That means knowledge of, okay, well, now that we know what the relationship between all this is, between us and God and the material world, how do we act in that relationship? What are the activities, proper activities to engage in those relationships? And then the third level of knowledge is called Prayojana Jnana, which means knowledge of what is the final mature fruit of that relationship, that Krishna prema, or love for Krishna, love of Krishna. So the purpose of Bhagavad-Gītā then is to give us that transcendental knowledge. So doubts are caused by ignorance. Ignorance is destroyed by transcendental knowledge. So that necessarily means doubts are destroyed by transcendental knowledge. And once doubts are destroyed, Krishna says, one can know me in full. So that means transcendental knowledge is the foundation of Krishna consciousness. That means Krishna consciousness is not a sentimental, activity. It's not a sentiment. It's actually based on knowledge. So the Krishna consciousness movement, Prabhupada worked very hard to give us these books. He only slept 3 hours at night, every night, because he would rise at 1 or 2 in the morning and translate for a few hours before everybody else was up and at it. So he worked very hard to give us these books, and all we have to do is take them home and read them, study them, and associate with Prabhupada through his books. Take Prabhupada's association and gain real transcendental knowledge. So a few days ago on Wednesday, was the appearance day of Lord Nityananda. So Lord Nityananda is the intimate companion of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Bobby knew who Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda are. Okay. So the significance of Lord Nityananda is that he is the original fountainhead of Guru Tattva. That means all spiritual masters are representatives of Lord Nityananda. He is the Adi Guru, or the fountainhead of all Guru Tattva. So it's described that, we were speaking tonight, that we want to know Krishna in full, free from all doubts, right? Well, it's described that, guess what? You can never know Krishna. You can't get to know Krishna except in one way. And what is that one way?
Spiritual master.
Through Guru. Without Guru, one can never know God. So many times when we're out, in the public, meeting people and talking to people and whatever, many people say, yeah, it's me and God. There's no in between. There's no need of Guru, some man in between me and God. But actually, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared 500 years ago, he is Radha and Krishna combined. But in his appearance, he caused a very, very, very significant event to happen, and that was that Nityananda Prabhu also appeared. And nobody could properly approach or understand Chaitanya Mahaprabhu without going through Nityananda Prabhu. Nityananda Prabhu again being the Adi Guru, the origin and fountainhead of all spiritual masters. So most people have never even heard of Lord Chaitanya, even in India. Most people have never heard of Lord Chaitanya, even in India. And when they have heard of Lord Chaitanya, often they think, oh yeah, he was some great devotee or yogi or something, saintly person. They don't understand that he's God. But even more than not knowing Lord Chaitanya, virtually nobody has heard about Nityananda Prabhu. Like, who? What's that? He's really unknown, very unpopular for some reason. So Lord Chaitanya made it very clear that if anybody disrespects Lord Nityananda or doesn't approach Lord Nityananda, they can't have the mercy. They can never know Radha and Krishna. So why is that? That's because Guru Tattva, removes all the material attachments, the material misconceptions, etc., that stand in the way. So first one must approach Lord Nityananda and be freed of all these material obstacles. Then one can approach Lord Chaitanya. And when one approaches Lord Chaitanya in that way, after being cleansed by approaching Lord Nityananda, then by approaching Lord Chaitanya, one can actually understand Radha and Krishna. So we have to understand that the main obstacle we have to making progress in Krishna consciousness is that we harbor doubts. And what is the doubt that we're harboring? we actually doubt, deep down inside, we actually doubt whether this is really true, or this would really work for me, or that I doubt whether I even really want this. I can't, just like, you're walking up a flight of stairs, and you're on the first stair. Now, in order to progress to the second step fully, what do you need to do? You're putting one foot on the second step, but now what do you need to do?
Take one off the first.
You gotta get off the first step. But if you're really attached to that first step, no, I don't wanna let go. I don't wanna let go. Then you don't truly make it to the second step. You're like in limbo between the two. So you fall back to the first step. So the reason we're attached to a lower level is because we actually don't have faith. We have doubts about whether I should be on that second level. If I had faith that that second step is really a good place to be, I would quickly take my foot off the first step. So what's causing us to move very slowly, or maybe not move at all, this hesitancy, is due to doubts. And those doubts are fueled by our attachments. And our attachments are fueled by the doubts. So Nityananda Prabhu has actually come, Guru Tattva has actually come to remove those obstacles of material attachments and doubts. That's why before we chant Hare Krishna, we always chant the Panchatattva mantra. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasi Gaur Bhaktivinoda. That before we can approach the Hare Krishna mantra, first we approach the Panchatattva mantra, and by Lord Nityananda's mercy, obstacles will be removed in the chanting, in our chanting of the Maha Mantra. So Prabhupada, in the 4th chapter here, he said that doubts can be removed by transcendental knowledge. And how did he say that? It's right at the end of chapter 4. He said ignorance can be removed by gradual acceptance of the principles of Krishna consciousness. So doubts or ignorance are removed by transcendental knowledge, which means that they're removed by gradual acceptance of the principles of Krishna consciousness. So I thought maybe tomorrow we could, when we're at the next home program, we could discuss that topic of, okay, we admit, we're now honestly admitting that the whole problem on why I'm not making advancement in Krishna consciousness is due to the fact that I'm harboring doubts in my heart. Those doubts are due to ignorance. Ignorance can be removed by the gradual acceptance of the principles of Krishna consciousness. So now, what we want to look at tomorrow is, how do we gradually accept the principles of Krishna consciousness? Because if we can do that, then the ignorance will be destroyed, which means the doubts will be destroyed, and our path to knowing Krishna in full will be completely wide open. So, and we'll stop there and see if anybody has any questions or comments. Actually, thank you for saying that, because actually we all have doubts, and we shouldn't be embarrassed by that. It's natural that we have doubts. If we didn't have any doubts, then we would immediately be fully surrendered to Krishna exclusively. Right? That's what I was saying earlier, that Krishna actually requests at the end of the Bhagavad-Gītā that Arjuna, you simply abandon all your varieties of concepts of the different types of shelter, etc., that you have, and just surrender unto me. Now, we're not doing that because we have doubts. Now, it's not wrong to have doubts. It's actually not wrong. But what is wrong?
To not get rid of them, or not attempt to.
Yeah, to harbor the doubts or to hide the doubts. I don't have any doubts. I don't have any doubts. Do you see any doubts? I don't see any doubts. So, the association of devotees is actually the purpose of the association of devotees. One of the purposes of the association of devotees is to give us an opportunity to put our doubts on the table and have them addressed. That's what Arjuna is doing in Bhagavad-Gītā. What do you think the Bhagavad-Gītā is? There's no need for 18 chapters of Bhagavad-Gītā. The only reason Krishna spoke the Bhagavad-Gītā was because Arjuna was overflowing with doubts. If Arjuna had been free of doubts, we wouldn't even have this book. The Bhagavad-Gītā, what's that? No such thing. So this whole, conversation simply took place because Arjuna was revealing his doubts. He was putting them right on the table. Naked, right there, for everyone to see. Why was he putting his doubts on the table? Was he just wanting to show off his dirty laundry, or what? Why was Arjuna freely spilling all his doubts on the table, as the expression goes? Why was he doing that?
He wants to proceed. He wants to decide whether what to do.
Yeah, so how, by putting his doubts on the table, was that going to happen? What was he?
Because
You're right, but what was?
he was a devotee of Krishna. He trusted. He surrendered.
Yes, but you're right. But the point I'm making is, he put his doubts on the table because what was he wanting to happen?
He wants to get clarified.
Yes, he wants Krishna to come and kill those demons. He calls Krishna Madhusudana. Oh, Madhusudana. What does Madhusudana mean? He who killed the demon Madhu. So he's saying, oh, Madhusudana, and he calls him Keshi. He who killed the Keshi demon. So he freely, and you can't put your doubts on the table with people you don't trust, with people you don't know, with people you don't feel comfortable with. Arjuna felt completely comfortable with Krishna. He completely trusted him. So he freely exposed all of his doubts for this purpose, so that Krishna would annihilate them. Please, he said, he's basically saying, Krishna, could you please kill all these demons? You killed Keshi, you killed Putna, you killed Agasura, you killed Bakasura, you killed Aristasura, on and on and on. You killed Kamsa. Could you come and actually kill all these demons called doubts that are hanging out in my heart? Here, I'll put them right out here for you to kill. That's why he revealed his mind. Because he wanted his doubts destroyed. Because he wanted to be able to freely and fully surrender to Krishna without any doubts. You can't surrender to Krishna with, okay, Krishna, I'll surrender to you, but I'm going to carry some extra baggage of doubts with me. You can't do that. You can't do that. You see the Olympic sports going on, You don't see, the swimmers, for example, in the Olympics, or whatever, swimming. They always have their hair cut very short, small goggles, very small clothing, and then they can swim like a fish. They don't go into the pool with, heavy clothes and heavy shoes and jewelry and long hair. Why? You can't swim with all that extra baggage. It's going to take you half an hour to get across the pool. You know? Right? So if you want to surrender to Krishna, you can't be carrying extra baggage. And that extra baggage that's weighing us down and causing us not to be able to surrender to Krishna are those doubts. So Arjuna just puts them all on the table and says, Krishna, please destroy them. So this is one of the purposes of associating with devotees. That we can raise our hand and say, hey, I have a doubt, and we can express the question that we have, the doubt that we have, the concern that we have, whatever, so that it can be dealt with, right? Disposed of. So, if anybody has any questions, comments, or doubts to express, we can take a few minutes for that. And that's actually what the Hare Krishna mantra, we're actually imploring Krishna. My dear Radha, my dear Krishna, please engage me in your devotional service. But I know I can't engage in your devotional service. I can't. It's not possible. Until I come to that purified stage. So, when we chant Hare Krishna, we are begging for service. But that begging for service in this stage means, my dear Radha and Krishna, please cleanse my heart of all these nonsense doubts, etc., that are holding me back, because I want to be given the privilege of your devotional service. And that's what Lord Nityananda came to do. He came to freely distribute the Hare Krishna mantra to even the most sinful of all sinners. He was instructed by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to go out throughout, Navadvip and preach to people, get them to chant Hare Krishna. So Nityananda Prabhu heard about two outrageous personalities, Jagai and Madai. He was hearing about how they're so sinful that Chitragupta, he's the scribe or whatever for Yamaraj, the Lord of Death. And Chitragupta's job is to keep a little record book. Like he's the clerk, So he has to keep a little record book of everybody, of all the sins that they perform in their life, so that when death comes, Chitragupta can take that report to Yamaraj, the ultimate judge, and say, here, my lord, here's the report on, so-and-so. And then Yamaraj looks at that report, and then he decides what that sentence should be for that person, what the punishment should be for that person. So Chitragupta, he complained to Yamaraj that, I forget how many assistants he had, like 30 assistants or something. And he said, despite all of my assistants working nonstop, day and night, for a whole month straight without taking a break, writing down Jagai and Madai's sins, they haven't even made a dent. They haven't even made a dent into it. So he complained to Yamaraj that this is too heavy of a task for us. So anyway, Nityananda Prabhu heard about these two people. He said, wow, these people are phenomenally sinful, just awesomely sinful, So I'm going to go and get them to chant Hare Krishna. So this is Nityananda Prabhu. Okay, looks like everybody is doubt-free and question-free because there's no discussion. So
I think you might have covered. So you just said, why is this everyone knows about Krishna, but not about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda. What is the reason why?
Well, when we say that so many people know about Krishna, but they don't know about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, two things. People may know about Krishna, but that doesn't mean they know Krishna.
Yeah.
So many, many, many people, especially from India, will say that they know Krishna. But the fact of the matter is, especially in Kali Yuga, it's explained, well, for Kali Yuga, it's explained, nobody can know Krishna properly and in full unless they know Krishna through Gaura-Nitai. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is called the hidden avatar. He's very confidential. And one can't even know Gaura-Nitai unless they receive that, or they are introduced to them through the pure devotee Vaishnava Guru. So one cannot know God without Guru. And Guru means one who actually is a devotee of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu. So unless and until we come in contact with the devotees of Gaura-Nitai, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu, we can never actually know Radha and Krishna. So many people might say, oh yes, I know Krishna, I know Krishna. But if they don't know Gaura-Nitai, then they don't know Krishna. And you can't know Gaura-Nitai if you don't know Guru. So the Vaishnava Guru is the essential element in our life. Otherwise we can just have academic knowledge. You know, anybody can have academic knowledge about Krishna or Lord Chaitanya. But only if we receive through Guru. So that's the secret of success in spiritual life, is that the spiritual aspirant actually earnestly hankers for and begs for the mercy of the pure devotee of the Lord. Unless and until we have that in our life, we can't actually properly, get to know Krishna in full, free from all doubts. Okay, if there's nothing else, then I guess we'll stop there and try to continue the discussion tomorrow about this point that ignorance is removed by the gradual acceptance of the principles of Krishna consciousness.